Yeah, and we are live. Hi, girl. Oh my god. Hi, everyone. It's me, your lovely host, Rin. Welcome back to the podcast because I've been away for a little while. With me today, I have Tahir, and I've been following him a bit on TikTok and watching his videos on what he's learned so far from Suriname and about his experience so far. So we'll be getting to know a little bit more about him.
hmm
So please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Share this video with all of your friends, and please share your questions if you have them as well in the chat. And when commenting down below, please keep it civil, guys.
Yeah, be
Thank
nice.
you. Exactly.
Yeah, you
So,
gotta be nice.
yeah. Tahir, tell me a bit about yourself.
To start off, my name is Tahir. I live and work in Toronto, Canada. I was born and raised in Holland, and yeah, I work in marketing, and that's about it. I mean, my life is kind of simple.
Yeah, so what did you study when you were in Holland? Because
Mhm.
you went into marketing in the US, so I want to see how that became your thing, like
Right.
your career choice.
hmm So basically, I was born and raised in Holland. I lived there until I was 18. I went to elementary school in Holland as well. I also went to middle school and high school because, the Dutch education system kind of combines middle school and high school. Um, the fascinating thing is when I got to middle school and high school, I studied FEMBO bosses. So that kind of surprises a lot of people when I tell them that I went to university in the United States because, it's not that common for people who studied at that level in Holland to go to university. Because, so at the end of elementary school, right, they have us do a test called a CITO-TOEFL. And to be honest, I didn't really do too well on that. I'll I'll leave it up to your imagination um about what I scored. But yeah, after I finished the FAMU bosses, so I specialized in electronics. So after I did that, I was kind of like clueless about what to do and this and that. So my dad suggested that I'd go into to film school. So that's where I kind of got a interest in film and TV because I used to do the audio video for the mosque, and since I used to do that, my dad was like, "Okay, I'm gonna send you to like a film school. It's called Open Studio." So that school is located in Amsterdam South. So it was a 1 year pr- program, and basically I learned all the basics f- f- from directing, editing, writing, producing. So after that, I got done with that, and then I went into web design. Um, that was another 1 year program, and for that I went to a school called College of Multimedia. So basically what I did over there is I learned all the stuff about web design. I learned about HTML, CSS, blah 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 blah. So basically I learned how to make websites and stuff. And then um, in 2010, me and my family, we decided to move to the States because we were the only ones from my mom's side that lived in Holland. So my mom started to miss her family, so we decided to go to the States. And I didn't know that we were gonna go to the States at the time because the way I found out that we were gonna go to the States was that when I saw my dad on the laptop, I saw him like going to like university websites, right? And then I was like asking my dad, like, "Hey, what are you doing on your laptop and this and that, right?" And then he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna look for schools because we are gonna go to the States in like 6 months." And I was like, "Wait, what? You're telling me that we are gonna go to America?" Because like we always, back when I was little, right?
Yeah.
We always uh, visited my family in the States for like a few weeks. Like sometimes it's like a month, sometimes it's like 2 months. Like to be honest, we didn't exactly take time off for school, but you got to do what you got to do to see family,
Yeah.
right? So I kind of had experience of like going back and forth to the States, and like this time it was gonna be permanent. So I was kind of in shock and kind of excited because in the movies you see like um, people going to college and this and that, the whole thing. So yeah, when I got to America, when I got to the States, we first stayed at my sister's house for like a couple of months, and then we moved into our own house. And to be honest, adjusting was kind of difficult. Partially because I've never gone to a school in the States. Um, the language wasn't so much of an issue because I already knew how to speak English,
Yeah.
but like blending in into like this American lifestyle was kind of difficult because I wasn't used to like being in this environment for like a long time. When you go on a holiday, you kind of get like a gist of like the culture, but it's not exactly the same thing compared to actually living in the country, right? So I got enrolled into a community college, and for somebody that studied FAMU bosses, that was kind of a difficult thing because um, the first semester they had us do a test, a exam for like evaluating your English level, your math level, and your reading level. So I scored really bad on the math because the type of math that I had back in Holland, so basically the Dutch education system, right, is divided into like several uh, tiers. And I was kind of on the bottom tier because, to be honest, I was kind of lazy. So, I didn't really put much effort when I was back in Holland, but like when I got to America, like that's when I really started to recognize my potential. Like so back to the math thing. I scored really bad on maths. So I started at the bottom tier in community college. They had me do arithmetics in college. So basically, it's basically um, it's basically it's basically fractions, um, timetables, this and that. All the basic stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then it was like super difficult because not only was that one of my first classes, it also happened early in the morning. And not only did that happen early in the morning, it was a accelerated class. So basically, a normal semester lasts about like 5 months, but this class did it in like 3 weeks or something. And like I couldn't keep up because I was like new. I had to get used to like the whole language thing. I had to get used to like all this new like terminology and that stuff. So basically, to make things short, I failed my first class and I had a GPA overall of 1.0. And that is not the best GPA you want to start out with in university, right? So, after that math class, I enrolled into a different class, but with like the same class, but with a different teacher. And, it made me realize that, teachers really have an impact on how you learn stuff because, like, I basically went from a F to a plus, I think, in the same class. So after that, I finished my other classes that we call GE classes. So basically, these are like general classes like sociology, biology, psychology, and blah 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 blah. So I spent like 2 3 years at a community college. Then after that, I transferred into a 4 year college where I did my specialization. So I specialized. I wanted to specialize in film, to be honest, but my class was impacted. So the major was impacted. So basically, what that entails is that there are too many people in the same major. So my counselor, he told me, if film is full, why don't you go for TV?
Mm.
So I was like, okay, yeah, it's kind of the same thing, but we get jobs. Ironically, um, I did not get a job in TV or film.
Mm.
Um, so basically, after I graduated, I had to go back to Holland because of like immigration stuff. So after spending like a full decade having friends, having, getting used to the American lifestyle, knowing my way around things and doing this and that, I had to go back to Holland. And then the rest of my family, they stayed in the US. So, me at the age of like 24, 25 ish, I don't remember because like my time in Holland was basically a blur. Um, so I spent a year in Holland. I remember the very first time that I got to Holland, I met my uncle and I had such a difficult time like making sentences in Dutch because the Dutch that I speak at home, it's like our own language because you make your own like
Yeah.
you make your own like words, you like Englify stuff like it's not like proper Dutch. But when I got to meet my uncle with who I was gonna be staying, I didn't know how to make a sentence. Like I was so like flabbergasted and like, okay, wait, I'm back in the country that I was born in. I'm back in the country that I grew up in. I'm back in the country that I went to school in. That I you uh you know experienced my childhood in, and I don't know anything about this country because being a adult in a country and being a child in a country, right? They're like two different things. Because I didn't know how to like open up a bank account in Holland. Because like that thing is super super tedious. I will tell you that. Because like compared to the compared to the states, you go inside a bank, you spend 5 minutes inside a bank, and you have a new bank account. But in Holland, I will tell you, the process was so tedious. It took me like 2 3 weeks to get a bank account in Holland. And then I realized, Holland is so bureaucratic compared to the States. So, I had to get used to that stuff. And then up on top of that, I had to find like a job, which I never had back in Holland. So, I got a little taste of like the job market in Holland. I will tell you, the first job that I got in Holland back when I, went back to Holland was a job at Albertine. Um, I used to stock shelves at Albertine for like 2 weeks because like after that they just fired me because like I was so bad at that stuff. They were like, you're not focusing. You seem a little bit depressed, and I'm like, well, duh, because I'm like, yo, my family is like all the way back in the States, and I'm like here in Albertine as a what we call in Dutch, filler.
Yeah.
And so, I stuck like, and that was not even the worst part. They had me stock the shelves at like 7 o'clock, and then on top of that, I had a bike over there for like 45 minutes in like the cold. And like I came straight out of sunny California where the weather was like 30 degrees. And then I'm back in this stupid country where it's like cold and this and that. It's like hailing and raining and all that. So like, and then they had me like work the counter on top of that, It's like
Oh boy.
so the Albertine that I worked at was close to like a hospital and close to the university. So it was, um, if I remember correctly, it was at the FEU or the UFE.
Oh, Fei Fu. I
Yeah, the
went there.
FEU
It's
or the
like
UFE. I don't remember. Yeah,
Vrije Universiteit van Amsterdam.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, during rush hour, it used to be crazy because those people, nurses, doctors, students, like they all come down on this one small Albertine, and there were like three people working at that super tiny Albertine, and I used to work there like during rush hour, and these people are like animals. They just grab the stuff, and like my manager was like back in the back yelling to me, "Hey, stock the stuff, restock!" Like it was like a war zone every
Oh boy.
every single day, and then they had me work the counter. So me having never worked at the counter, I was like responsible. Uh, um, I was like responsible for like bringing up stuff, getting people coffee, and I remember that I launched a small like sausage thing on the customer almost because the thing
Oh,
kind of like
slipped
Yeah,
or
the kind of
yeah,
like it
flew.
goes open like that, and like I had this sausage uh pastry thingy on top of like the counter, and like the thing like launched in the air, and I was like, oh, okay, well, this is not the right job for me. So my manager, he was like, I see that you're kind of depressed and that you're not working the way you should be working. Cause like, I was like kind of sick of it after a few days. Cause like, I was like, this is not the kind of place that I imagined myself working at. Because like, I have a bachelor degree, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like, for somebody who studied bosses and gets a university degree, that's a big thing. And I
yeah,
thought, I have my degree, I'm gonna go to Holland, I'm gonna get a good job and this and that, right? And then I ended up at Albertine, out of all places. Not saying that it's bad, but you have certain
expectations.
expectations of where you want to work at after you graduate. So, um, I got a quick course in essential Dutch jobs when I went back. So, after Albertine, it didn't stop at that. I got to work at the Action. I got to work at the Action, and I was like, man, I'm going through these typical Dutch jobs. And so basically, my job at the Action was, well, the same thing. I mean, it didn't get any better. Um, so
The
I
products
stock
just changed.
shelves. What?
The products just changed.
Yeah, the product should change, and um, so it was a morning shift, I think. But the good thing about this one was that it was walking distance. So basically, um, when I went to Holland, right? I got to move back into my old neighborhood that I used to grew up in back in Amsterdam. So um, the city borough that I kind of grew up in back in Amsterdam was the eastern part. So there are a lot of like Turkish people, Moroccan people. You have the Dapper Muddock there. Um, you have like a lot of stuff going on, right, in that part of the city. So I was back in the part of the city that I grew up in, and I couldn't help myself but feel n- nostalgic like the entire year. Cause like when I saw like the hospital that I was born in, I was like, oh my god, that's the hospital that I was born in, and that is where that happened, and that is what that happened. And I used to go with my sister, and I used to go with my mom to like the Osterpark and that stuff. Like I felt like a kid when I moved back into like Amsterdam Oost. So back to the job. Um, back to the job. So I got a new job at the Action, and it was kind of walking distance. So that was the advantage of working there. But I sucked at that job as well. I didn't stay more than 3 weeks. So after that, I had to find a new job. Um, but um, back then I kind of knew that I wanted to go to Canada, because if not America, then Canada is the second best option. Because the culture is kind of similar which I find out later it really is not. But we will get to that like a bit later. So, I sucked at that job as well. And then I don't know how. I will tell you, I found a new job through this job agency I think I found online, but I'm not sure. I worked at a hotel in the center of so basically in the downtown of Amsterdam, right? So I worked at a hotel. I forgot what the name of the hotel was, but um they hired me as a room service. And let me tell you, that was the work experience. That was the worst experience of my life. So, as a typical Amsterdamer, who was born and raised in Amsterdam, we have our, we are kind of pre- prejudiced against like tourists and that stuff because, tourists are like everywhere, it's, I mean, we love tourists, but at the same time we kind of hate them because, they move slow, or they move in groups, or they just stand there and they just don't get out of your way, right? But I will tell you, that time I worked at a hotel, I really started to despise tourists because the state of the room was like beyond bad. Like it was horrible. Like the stuff they had me do, I was like, oh my god. So um, so I got to work with this really nice Romanian kid, and basically he showed me all the ropes. Like he taught me how to like make pillows or how to make beds, or you know how to do that stuff. But
Yeah.
when you work in a hotel, you have to do certain things a certain way, to make it look presentable. So he was a really nice guy. And they when you work in that environment, right, where people are like room service and this and that, right, you get to discover a part of Holland that not a lot of people know about Holland, because you suddenly work with a lot of foreigners, a lot of immigrants who just come to Holland to, make money and send it back to their parents. And, it really gave me a different perspective of like, of like how there are, excuse me, how there are like different sides of like a country. Because, when you were like, when I was like born and raised in Holland, you never see that side of like that, you never see that side of Holland where you see people actively like struggling, or like see people like actively like make ends meet. But when you are in that environment, you get to talk to people and you get to hear their stories. And it's I don't know, it's a eye opener, because people like me, I was born in Holland, I speak the language and this and that, but these people, they have to get by without knowing the language and this and that, so it really like opened my eyes on like how different people are gonna be depending on like what sector you work in. So I'm kind of glad that I got to experience that part. But then again, I sucked again. And after 2 3 weeks, they let me go because I
Mm.
wasn't good at that. But that made me realize that I have my weaknesses and that I have my strengths and that I have to accept them. Um, and um, back in the action job, I realized that I really like talking to people. I liked giving people advice. I like to socialize. I like to do this. I like to do that. Get to know people. I was like super customer friendly, to put it like that. So then I realized, my strengths are more like in the social space, customer service
Yeah.
and this and that. So online, I forgot what website I used. I think it was like monster.com, and I was doing some scrolling and this and that, just looking for jobs if something like fits me. And then I came across this job posting. It said like customer service wanted for like a bus company. If you like enjoying if you like enjoying talking to people, um, if you like being outside and this and that, then apply. So I was like, oh, this sounds like me because like I love talking to people. I love being outside. I love like socializing and blah 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 blah. Blah. So I applied, and then the day after, I got a call saying they were interested in me and they wanted me to go down to their office. And the interview process was more like a conversation. Like it was the longest interview conversation I had because like that the interview lasted for like 2 hours, I believe. So the guy liked me. Um, he liked what I did, and in the job, you have to like speak a few languages. So I told him, I speak Dutch, of course, because I'm in Holland. So I speak Dutch, I speak English, I speak Urdu, and at that time, I was learning French because I knew that I was going to go to Canada. So, the official language in Canada is English and French. So, I was like, okay, let me learn French to make the immigration process a little bit easier. So, I got hired at that job, and, it was chaotic. Like every day was chaotic. So basically, what that job was is that I was responsible for the customers that were gonna travel to different European countries by bus. So it was basically up to me to guide people to their stations, to be their contact person, to engage with the customers, to solve like issues they had and blah 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 blah, right? So I really liked that job, but at the same time, it was super chaotic. And I remember I realized that their customer base consisted of like German people and French people. And I was like, okay, I need to learn French as soon as possible because like people came to be speaking French already, assuming that I spoke French. So I was like, oh damn, okay, I really need to learn this and that. So
How much French did you know at the time?
oh, how much French?
Yeah.
Bro, I knew like a sentence or something. I knew a sentence, but listen to this. After a year working, I could like speak effortlessly to like anybody because like you are basically in a French environment, right? Because like every day you are gonna be speaking French, talking to people in French and this and that, and like his listening to French, and like you gotta be the person that basically solves your issues. And not only that, the bus drivers, they also spoke French. So, as my colleagues, I also had to communicate with them. So, that accelerated my my French skills and also my German skills. Because, people are going to be speaking in German to you, blah, 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 right? And then at that job, I met one of my best friends in Holland, which who I still talk to. They are lovely people. Um, and then we started to go to restaurants. We started to go out. We even went to London together. We went to Germany,
Oh,
and at that moment, I thought I really found my footing in Holland because I now have a social life. I have a job that kind of pays. I have a place to stay. I got used to how people do things in Holland. I speak the language. I thought I found my footing. But I always knew that I was going to go to Canada because, after spending a decade in the United States, the Dutch way of life is just not meant for me. So the way I got to Canada is very interesting. So basically, not a lot of people know this, but a lot of countries have programs that allow you to work or study in the country um, that has a mutual agreement with the other countries. So basically, Holland has like agreements with like um, a lot of different European countries and also Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and stuff, right? So the program that I went through is called Working Holiday. So basically, what that is, it gives you like a 1 year work permit that allows you to work and study, like I said before, right? But here's the thing: the way you get your work permit is completely random. So you don't know if you get the work permit or not. So um, every year, a certain country has quotas. So the bigger the country, um, the more space you have. Like for instance, the UK has like, I don't know, 4 or 5 thousand like spots, and like Holland has like 200 spots. So the chances of me getting a working holiday is a little bit more harder to get in Holland because it's also completely at random, right? But then again, I knew that my chances were good because not a lot of people know about this. N- 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 not a lot of people know about the working holiday thing. So I applied a few months in advance, and then you get a confirmation to say that you are in the pool. And basically, they give you like a list of documentation to fill out and to send. And if you mess up on one kind of documentation, they disqualify you immediately. And I happened to try to go to Canada last year, when I used to live in the States, because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to like stay in the States for too long. So I tried applying, but they disqualified me because I put in my American address instead of my Dutch address.
oh,
So they disqualified me. So when I was in Holland, I was like, okay, I am not gonna put my American address. I live in Holland. I have a Dutch passport. I'm gonna put in my Dutch address. Okay, so to make the long story short, I got my port of entry a few months later. So that basically gives you like permission to go to Canada and to work. And I didn't have the funds at the time. I will tell you, the minimum funds to go to Canada was like 1,200. Right? That sounds like not a lot for a lot of people, right? It's like just a little bit of money, but you got to consider the amount of money that I was making in Holland. I worked 1 full year to get to that amount. So yeah, it was a lot of hard work. Um and I quit in December of 2019, I believe, yes. Then I started booking my flight. Um, Before going to Canada, I wanted to visit my family in the States, so I spent like a couple of weeks in the States before going out to Canada. I was kind of nervous to go to Canada because it was my first time going to Canada, and not only that, I was gonna find I needed to find a place to stay, and I needed to find work. And looking back, I was so naive because like I thought, okay, Canada is gonna be the same thing as the United States, same language, same culture, same way of life. But oh my god, when I got to Canada, it was so strange. First of all, right? So remember that I told you that, they ask for all kinds of like documentation and stuff. So, they tell you to bring like hard copies of the documentation and show it at the security and blah, 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 blah. And then they will evaluate if you're, good to go. Okay. So I prepared all these documentation, all the stuff, right? Weeks in advance, I got my police certificate, which basically says, you are safe, you are not a danger to this and this country. I mean, then, I got like um, proof of like my citizenship, insurance, and blah, 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 right? So I was expecting to show all this documentation to the border security, right? And then when I got there, they were like, okay, we just need your port of entry and you're good to go. And then I'm like, okay, wait, I just have this big folder of like all this documentation and they just asked for like one piece of paper. And at that time I was like kind of disappointed because like I was like, okay, this is gonna be like a big thing. They want to see this, they want to see that. So I was like, okay. And then I got through the border security and I was like, oh, okay, this is Canada. And then when I got there, yo, all I saw was Indian people and Pakistani people. And I was like, wait, am I in Canada or am I in like India and Pakistan? And I was like, oh my god, even no, like yo, even the border security that checked me in, she was Indian as well. Like everybody was Indian at Pearson Airport. So Pearson is basically, the main airport in Toronto. So, that was my first time I landed. So, I still remember the exact time that I actually landed in Canada because I made a note of it in my phone. Um, it happened to be 11 o'clock as well. the start of this podcast. So um, when I got to Canada, it was like super foggy and misty and cold. Like I was like, oh my god, where the hell am I? Like it felt like Amsterdam at the same time, but at the same time, it felt like America. Like it was like super confused. Like I didn't know, cause when you visit a country for the very first time, right? You have a tendency to like compare and contrast, cause like oh, this is similar, this is not similar, blah 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 blah, right? So um, oh, I forgot to mention so I told my brother oh, where am I still
Your
online?
battery.
Yeah, my battery. And this is the time where I'm going to charge it. So, um, so my brother, he lives in Carolina, right? And he told me, I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna go fly, and we are gonna meet each other at the airport. So I wasn't completely alone when I got to Canada. Um, but so I had a Airbnb when I got to Canada, and basically that was a really bad Airbnb. And my brother was like, "Okay, we are not gonna let you stay in this Airbnb because basically what it was basically this lady. Cause like I didn't look at the description at the time, right? Cause I
Oh,
just wanted a place to stay in Canada, but it was a really strange and nasty Airbnb. And when my brother saw it, he was like, "Okay, I'm not gonna let you stay here." So we left the place, and we started looking on Kijiji. So Kijiji is basically a Canadian Craigslist, and we found a really nice landlady, and the rent was affordable, kind of, and the good thing is that it was kind of um in like a residential area in Toronto. So, I got to like experience like local Toronto culture at the same time. So, that was a good thing. But the strange thing happened when I first got to Toronto, like when I first got to downtown, I will never forget this. The first 2 minutes when I first stepped in downtown Toronto, a homeless man yelled at me, and
why
he
did he
was
yell
like,
at you?
"You dirty pocky, go back to your country."
Oh, what the
And I
fuck?
was like, okay. At the same time, I was like horrified, but at the same time, I was like kind of happy because I was like, oh my god, he knows exactly where I'm from. And then 2 minutes after that, a homeless lady wanted to shake my brother's hand out of nowhere. And she was like, "Hey, do you want to shake my hand?" And my brother was like, "No, what the hell? No, why would I do that?" And then the homeless lady was like, "No, why don't you shake my hand?" And then I was like, "Oh my god, Toronto is insane. They're crazy." And then 5 minutes walking, after that, um, this guy wanted to fight my brother. So I was like, "Yo, Toronto is crazy." But then I kind of forgot about it because when you get to downtown Toronto, right, you see all these like high rise buildings and this and that, like it looks like New York and blah 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 blah, right? And then when you get to Yonge and Dundas, which is basically our mini version of Times Square, you see all these people like the hustle and bustle, you just forget about it. And then I realized, oh my god, I am in Canada. Like I worked a full year for this, and now I'm in Canada. I'm in Toronto. Like I am in the north of like America. Like I had a lot of difficulty like navigating myself because like when you're when I used to live in like California, right? You just know, oh, okay, I'm in the West Coast in the United States. But when I got to Toronto, I was like kind of confused where to like put myself on the map because like it was the first time that I ever went to Canada. So like everything was new to me. I remember the first month I was like super confused because like it looked like New York, but it looked like London, but it reminded me of like Amsterdam. Like I had a hard time adjusting. And then, at the same time, you got to find a job. So, I was kind of panicking at the same time because, um, I only brought like 1,200 euros with me. Oh, I forgot, by the way, that 1,200 euros that converts into like roughly $2,500, and that was the minimum amount that they told you to bring to Canada. Because I didn't have a lot of money. My parents aren't rich, so I had to do everything on my own. And you gotta factor in rent. You gotta factor in like the bus system. Um, you gotta like know your way around the country in the same time because everything was new, like okay, yeah, like as I told you before, right, back in Holland we used to travel with my friends, right? We used to go to Germany, we used to go to like London, and we used to like use public transport all the time. And also when you live in Holland, especially when you live in Amsterdam, you don't really need a car, right? So you're kind of used to like taking like the subway and this and that. But like, I never went to Toronto, so I really had to familiarize myself with the TTC, the Toronto, so the public Toronto transport system. So, I had to do that at the same time. I had to get my social security number, which allows me to legally work in Canada. Um, I had to like buy, clothes and that stuff. I had to like familiarize myself with the city at the same time. And then on top of that, I had to like find a job, right? So, and at the same time, the money was like depleting at the same time because, rent and all that. So, I was kind of stressed because, the first day you're kind of in like a honeymoon phase, you're checking stuff out, you're trying to navigate. So, I was kind of panicking. After like the first 1 week or something, I was kind of panicking. Like, I came with the same assumption, I am educated in America, Canada, the US, they have the same kind of education level. So, finding a job shouldn't be that hard. Um, I majored in TV production uh, back then, back in America, and I have a bachelor in TV production. So, my idea was to get into the TV and film industry in Canada. But I was kind of stupid at the time, because, like, if you want to get into the TV and film industry, the most important thing to have is connections. And, me being new to Canada, I don't have any connections. I don't even have a family member that lives in Canada. Like, I am completely on my own. So, I went to like different like job agencies and see if I could like get a job over there. Then I got in touch with like industry professionals. And I remember this one lady, she told me, like, you are not going to be able to find a job unless you are going to be like a permanent resident, because, hiring a employee is also like an investment. They don't want to put their chances on somebody who is going to stay there temporarily, because, at that time, my work permit was only valid for 1 year. Right. So, I started to get a little bit desperate. Then I started to look for hotel jobs. Then it got so desperate. I started looking for like fast food jobs. And then I remember going on Indeed and seeing this job posting, and they were asking for people with this and this experience, for like videography, photography, social media, and this and that, right? So I was like, you know what? Let me apply and let me write my cover letter, and let's see what happens. So, I was kind of desperate, still looking for a job, and then suddenly I got a call back from one of the managers, and they told me they wanted a interview with me. And I was like super nervous because this was going to be my first ever interaction with the Canadian job market. So I went down there. They interviewed me. They liked me, and yeah, even though I'm not working in like the TV and film industry in Canada, it's still a related field. So I got that out of it. Um, I am now trying to look for a new job, and hopefully, new opportunities will flow in gradually. But the fascinating thing is that after like a couple of weeks in Canada, like when I was new, I realized that this was going to be permanent, because after that 1 year work permit expired, my employers, they like me so much, they gave me like an extension. And because of that extension, um, I segue myself into like a permanent uh, 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 residency, which was a very tedious process on its own. So yeah, now I'm living and thriving in Toronto, and I'm just living my life over here. So yeah,
Yeah, I've seen like from your story a lot of ups and downs
yeah,
and things you had to learn as well because like some people are like, "Oh, it's just a side job when you go to university or something. You'll
right.
find a job like that fast." It's like, no, in
It's
reality,
not
it
that.
doesn't
It's not
work
that
like
easy.
that.
Yeah,
No.
exactly.
And so I've been like trying to like find people who like know about this stuff and talk to them so I can get like a hint of like the experience as well
Yeah,
because this stuff wasn't told to me when I was younger.
right,
And so I had like no knowledge like on this type of stuff because like I also just like came from like alone from like Suriname to the
right,
Netherlands to study and
right,
also like my job is like kind of also like in a store, but
right.
I do like inventory so I don't have to like talk or to people that
Hey,
much.
the perfect job.
Yeah, because you talked about like pardon me.
Mhm.
You talked about like vakkenvullen and like restocking the shelves and stuff like that because I actually tried it out because it's like in one place where I work you can like do different things
Right.
and it wasn't really my thing because I kept like uh I couldn't lift like the stuff. It was like a bit difficult
Yeah.
for me. and you have to do like some stuff like spiegelen,
Oh yeah,
like
it's super super
yeah,
physical. Yeah, it's
yeah, you
very
have to like
physical.
follow the rules in order to restock the stuff.
Right,
And that wasn't really my thing, so I'm enjoying inventory a lot more.
right,
But yeah, like these students' jobs do not like pay that much or for as you would think, but it's enough for me now to just get by with like groceries and sports.
exactly.
So for now, it's okay. But it makes me kind of worried, like for later on, like what kind of jobs I'm going to be doing because as a foreign person living in like the Netherlands, it might be a bit difficult as
It
well
might
because
be,
like
yeah, because there's still that undertone of like I wouldn't say racism, but people have this kind of thing when when you're kind of a child of immigrants. They have this preconceived notion against you. So that kind of reminded me when about my sister. She also did the test, the Citotus. So that's a test that you have to do after elementary school, and she scored really well on that test, but teachers were still hesitant to let her study at a higher level. So instead of like going to the level that she like scored for, the teachers decided to like lower her level basically and to let her study on like a lower level, right? So my dad kind of disagreed with that, and just to show you the hoops some people have to go through, my dad l- my dad let my sister take a IQ test to prove that my sister um basically skilled enough to study at a higher level. So it manifests in like different basically this sentiment like manifests in like different ways of life, especially when you live in Holland. So you are gonna come across it.
yeah, because I heard like the same thing from like family and stuff like that. Like you do have to like fight for it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, that whole sense of like prejudice. I can't add too many words to it, like
Mhm.
for like certain reasons. But but yeah, um, but it's not so nice because this thing is funny because they're like because of these stereotypes. They're like, oh yeah, like oh Indian people are like super smart, but like when they
Yeah.
uh like but then like during like these stuff like this like with the
Mhm.
tests and stuff they're going to have like the opposite prejudice and
Right.
it's kind of like weird to me like especially that it because it just doesn't make sense. It's just
Right.
yeah, it's just
I mean,
confusing.
people. In the end, people are gonna be people, and the
Yeah,
only way to change that is to actually show people what people are like capable of. Because me having studied Biobasis and me having a bachelor degree is something that I would like never imagine when I was like younger. And it goes to show that the Dutch education system doesn't really push people to their full potential as it should be.
yeah, because like people say like schools are still like in like an old mindset, like with the whole standardized tests and stuff like that
Right.
situation, because like everyone thinks differently. For instance, like you could like be super skilled in something, but you're not like developing it yet, or you don't know it yet, and you're just like going in a completely different direction that
I
just
mean,
like
I mean,
might
when
not be
you
you.
think about, I mean, when you think about it, right? So I don't know if you guys still have the Ceto toots in Holland or not, but
I'm not
it's,
sure about that because like I didn't go
oh yeah, you
to
didn't go. Okay,
elementary or middle
right.
school here.
Okay, so but if they still have it, like it's crazy to think that your whole future is determined at like 12 years old, and like there
Yeah.
is very little room to like move up to like prove that you have like pr- uh regressed.
Yeah, because some people aren't as fast as others.
Yeah,
Like for instance, me, I'm not as fast as like other people.
yeah,
I might need to like take a bit more time to
right,
understand things,
right,
and um like this whole idea of like you have to be like fast and stuff like
right.
that in this situation. I'm like we have like enough yeah, how you say, directions that people can go in, like
Yeah,
uh it doesn't have to be like because like usually like when people like in Suriname, they're trying to go for like certain jobs like doctor and lawyer. So
right,
like for stuff like this, like especially at like age 12, you're like
right.
supposed to
Know what you want to do.
know what you want to do,
Yeah,
because like um that way, sort of, the way you the directions you take in your education will determine if you make it to that level, or will lead you to that level that you're
yeah.
looking
So
for.
it's kind of similar to the Dutch education
Yeah,
system, I imagine. Yeah.
yeah,
So it's kind of crazy when you think about it, but it is what it is.
yeah.
But I'm happy that I got to experience what I experienced,
Because it
and
might change in the future.
hmm
With the more we develop as people, and the system as
yeah,
well.
and I mean, more people our age are getting into like politics and stuff. So we might see actual like tangible like changes taking place soon, hopefully. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, because like knowledge is power,
exactly.
and yeah, at this moment with the economy and stuff like that, it's like a bit difficult for people to like keep their head above water, because like
Right,
yeah, most people go for like the jobs like working in the Albert Heijn or stuff like that,
right,
or sometimes they with the degree they have, they can't find a job, and it's like a bit difficult to do it in their field. And that's what I'm kind of worried about at the moment as well, because you said you worked in film and TV, uh like the marketing aspect,
no, so
or
basically
not yet?
I so
Yeah,
I
you
majored
majored in
in
film
film
and
and
TV.
TV, and now I work in marketing as
Ah,
a copywriter and a content writer. So these things are still related, but it's still not in the field that I wanted to go in. But you have to make compromises in life. And now I find that I'm more interested in the marketing aspect. But at the same time, I still have that dream in the back of my mind, like, okay, maybe one day I wanna like cause I wanted to be a editor for TV. So, I still have that in the back of my mind, but you have to be realistic. And
yeah,
given the experience that I have now, it's going to be more relevant to the jobs I'm gonna have in the future. You know.
Exactly, because I was a bit worried as well because I study like something that's like really close to related to like film and TV stuff, but
Right.
still a bit separated from it.
Hmm.
So I was like already like trying to find jobs or internships, uh, like places here, but
Hmm.
like it's kind of a bit difficult or like you said, with you also need like connections for this type
Right.
of stuff because you do not get in that place easily, and you need like some previous experience in that field.
Right.
Right now, for you, you are actually getting like the experience sort of in that field already, but more with the
Yeah, the
yeah,
marketing
related to the
aspect. Yeah.
copyright stuff. Yeah, the marketing
Right. Yeah.
aspect. And for me, someone who has not done that yet, it might still be a bit a slow process.
Right. I mean, for that reason, internships are very, helpful in getting that experience. But then again, in Holland, getting a internship is kind of as difficult as getting a job. So, that is another challenge to consider later on, maybe.
Yeah, because maybe like through the school or stuff, they might have connections or whatever.
Hmm.
So we'll see how that goes. Because I was thinking like you're allowed to go to a different country for like your internship as well. Like
Really?
yeah. So
So, what country are you thinking of?
I was thinking US or Canada
Oh,
or
nice.
New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
mean,
because yeah,
if you come to Canada, and definitely go to Toronto or Vancouver. So, these are the places too. But if you need help, then I'm always here.
thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, so like your experience so far living in Canada, the people you've met, like how has that been so far?
Ooh, it's been very interesting and turbulent, I have to say. So, I always say that Toronto itself is lovely, but the people inside of it are crazy, yet very helpful. Like it's very hard to pinpoint like a exact like vibe of the city, but like the people that I've met so far are very lovely. Um, they're helpful, but then again, you start to discover that the Canadian stereotype of like being polite and p- helpful and courteous is not always that true. There are rude people here. There are, there are rude people. There are, racist people here. And, you will meet them. I mean, you will meet them at one point in your life, no matter what. Um, the people that I've met so far are, nice people. I've met a lot of roommates. They are lovely. You get to see how Canadian people think and how like foreign people think that come to the country. Like it's a very nice experience overall. Um, you get to see the flaws of people. You get to see what people You get to see what makes people at their own like it's kind of difficult to explain, but it's yeah, there's like crazy people and there are lovely people at the same time. So yeah.
Oh, but I'm glad you found like your way there and that it's not bothering you too much. Like you've sort of like found a way to navigate the negativity.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, when you come to a country, you gotta deal with the good and bads, and there is no way to go around it, you know. So
Hmm.
yeah.
So, what is it like working in marketing and in the field
Uh,
that you work in?
so the position that I work at, so the company that I work at, the industry that I work in is kind of interesting because not a lot of people work in this industry, but I would say that working in the pest control industry and working in the wildlife industry is definitely a unique experience in that it is a very typical Toronto job. And the reason why I say that is because Toronto is very well known for its raccoons and squirrels. So, you know, working in that environment and like talking to like technicians and like taking pictures on site, it makes you realize that different jobs have a have like their own importance in whatever city you're in or whatever country you're in. So you know that gives me a very unique perspective, and you know you get to interact a lot with Canadians as well. You know, you get to see how they think, you get to see how the corporate culture is, which is very different than the Dutch corporate culture. Um, the Canadian corporate culture is kind of like the American corporate culture, but a little bit more looser. Um, I find that being in Canada, I have to put up a act. So basically, you know, you have to speak a certain way, you have to address people a certain way, which doesn't happen in Holland because, you know, when you look at the corporate culture in both countries, I find that the Dutch one is very like re- um, relaxed. In Holland, uh, people like to say, you know, don't call me your boss because um, you, you're not my dog, right? But in Canada, they want to keep that hierarchy with, you know, the workers and, you know, management, and then there is upper management, you know. So to experience that is very fascinating from a Dutch perspective.
Because like this is like a an interesting part because like the Dutch are like so relaxed with this type of stuff, and like Canada and Suriname have like this whole hierarchy thing that you still need to like talk with like
Oh,
um
sir, ma'am, this,
Suriname.
that. Like,
Yeah,
you gotta change your whole. Okay, maybe it's my job, but you know, overall, like, you gotta change your whole person, your whole personality when you get to your job. Like, I, I had a friend, right? Um, uh, he was like taking a look at my messages that I send at work, and he was like, "Is this you? That is the same person?" And that made me realize like how different Canadian 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 work culture expects you to behave as opposed to the Dutch work culture, because you know in Holland they see you as equals as far as my experience is concerned. But that doesn't mean that there are like r- relaxed people in Canada. You know, every country is gonna every company is gonna be different. You know.
hmm. Yeah, it's true. But like even though it's like so relaxed and stuff like that, but
Mm.
how do like people deal with like because like it's like been a topic for now with the whole thing with related to burnout and like
Right,
the 40-hour work week in the Netherlands and
right.
how much is it in Canada?
It's the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So, uh, 5 days a week, 40 hours, and it's the same thing basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, how do things like burnout and stuff like that being
Oh,
combated?
I have a very fascinating story with that. So back when I was in Holland, I think I mentioned it. I worked at the customer service job, right? And it was like a temp job. So basically, when you were available, you just work, right? I clocked in 60 hours a week in that job. It was really hard because, I needed the money. So
Yeah.
I worked as much as possible. And at one time, I was helping a customer behind the desk and I fell asleep right there and right then. And when I went home, I had a lot of different calls from like my manager, from like my boss, the regional manager, um, the company physician, and blah 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 blah, asking if I was okay. And they immediately put me on a 4 day leave to make sure that I was okay. But I don't see the same thing happening in Canada. It's more like you're more on your own. Here in Canada, you just have to suck it up because you don't want to seem weak to your employer, basically. So that is the biggest difference that I found. And this is the reason why a lot of people are experiencing a lot of burnouts because, they don't feel comfortable enough to be open with their boss to like say that they're tired or say that they're working too much or say that their workload is a bit too much. In Holland, I think the communication is much more open in terms of your feelings and in terms of your like personal stuff. So you like, when you're in Canada, I find that people like separate the personal and the work stuff. In Holland, it's a little bit more mixed because people in Holland they realize that your private life can also affect your professional life. I mean, that's my opinion. So yeah, that's what I think about it.
Yeah, because I heard that like your insurance here covers like per year 60 sessions with like a therapist like for mental health, and I did not know that. And in like places like Suriname, for instance,
Right,
uh it isn't like organized in this way, in this manner,
right,
and there are still like people who have like of course like stuff like this to deal with,
right.
and they're just looking for like someone to, for instance, talk to about this stuff
Yeah,
and need like some help with things like this.
right.
And for instance, yeah, here I feel that's like organized a bit better.
I mean, but then again, it's part of like the Dutch culture. I mean, if you look at Surinamese society as a whole, right, it's a little bit more unstructured and a little bit more spontaneous. Whereas in Holland, they do everything by the rules. Like even if you want to go visit like a family member, the funny thing is that you have to make like an appointment. In Surinamese culture, they just walk in as if they like, especially like, when it's like your family, then, you don't have to like, make a up in advance. Like, that's my experience. But it shows how like different cultures like deal with different things. Um, and going back to the burnouts, if you don't mind,
Yeah.
um, there has been talks in Canada to reduce the work week actually to four
Mm.
days. Um, because a lot of employees they feel comfortable because now that a lot of employees don't go to the office, they find that their work balance life has been way better, and they just wanted to keep it that way. And a lot of people are now wondering if the 5 day if the 5 day work week isn't outdated, because it's based on Henry Ford's model of like being productive for 8 hours, um, leisure 8 hours, and then sleep for like 8 hours. So that was the model they used like back in the day when like factories to mm, started to like change a society. But now people nowadays are actually actively like wondering if that is really as productive as as it was like thought to be back in the day.
Yeah, because like before Henry Ford came with his uh triple eight rule in a sense.
Yeah,
The work weeks and work hours used to be a lot longer,
yeah,
and like even weekends you weren't free, you still had to work.
right.
So in a sense that was like an improvement, but now we have like more ways of doing research and stuff like that. So I'm guessing like a
Well,
change
the
might
thing
be in
is
order
also
for
automation also
that
plays a
as well.
role. Like people can like cut their work in half just by like automating their tasks, and people like that. But it's like, do we really need to work that long? And like, do we really need to like? I mean, if you can get the same results in like a shorter time, then why not do that?
Yeah, of course.
But then again, they say that efficiency is not is rewarded with more work. So if employees are more efficient, they keep it a secret.
Mm,
I mean, I can
yeah.
speak for myself, but I will not go into that.
Yeah, because like I heard it as well, like during like doing inventory, I was like done and like people were like, "Oh, you're looking for work," even though they're faster than me, but
Yeah,
they like rest in between, and
yeah,
like I just go for the next thing, and they're like, "Oh, you're looking for work," and
yeah.
I'm like, "Oh shit,"
No, you're
but I'm
not.
just
No,
like I'm
you're
just
not
gonna
supposed to
work.
do that. You are not supposed to do that.
Yeah, but we're only allowed to go home when the entire store is like been counted and stuff like that.
Oh
So
wow.
I'm like,
Oh
I
yeah, you
kind of
gotta
want to
work.
like, yeah, but then it's like a thing between if you work like more hours, you get paid more. So they're kind of like
Right,
leaning towards that.
right.
Or it's like if you like are efficient like and fast, you can like go home early, but then
Yeah,
you miss out on that money.
right.
So that's like the
I
whole
mean,
thing that like you're fighting with.
it's like sacrificing your mental health, but also sacrificing your income, and that is not a good, healthy way to deal with that, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are changes all around the world because of like the COVID-19 pandemic, and that kind of made me realize that this is like a global event that literally impacts everyone. I mean, no matter if you live in Europe, it doesn't matter if you live in America, South America, it's something that impacts us to this day, and also made us wonder if this is the way we want to continue working, because a
Of
lot of
course.
work is now online or on on distance.
Like now you can like work from home, but sometimes I see like negative stuff with like working from home
Yeah.
because then you're doing everything in one space, and especially since some people might not have like um yeah, because they might not be able to afford like a larger room or stuff like that, so
Mhm.
they eat, sleep, drink, work, and all that stuff in one room, and it might be like also not good for your mental health.
Right. No, I mean, that is true. I mean, a lot of people assume that these people have like large apartments and this and that, and they forget about the majority of us that, as you said earlier, that, sleep, work, and this and that in the room. And, it's like, in a way, you are not separated from your professional life.
Yeah.
So,
and
it can have a toll on your mental health.
sometimes these things do have to be separated so you can get things like the proper amount of rest and not
Right.
be in one place where they're all these stimulate this
I mean, but then again,
stimulation and stuff like that.
yeah, but then again, I would argue I cannot just lay down in the office. At home, I can.
Yeah.
And, I can cook for myself in the office. At home, I can. Or I can, go to this and this place. But, I can slip in between like breaks to go to this. It has a lot of advantages, but also disadvantages. And, since this whole thing is new, I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out how to balance this at the same time and come to terms, especially employers have to come to terms that people want to work and people want to have a life at the same time.
Yeah, because like people who have like more room can like separate their spaces and still have like all of those benefits of
Right,
being able to lay down and cook food for
right,
themselves, and but not everybody can have that. But yeah, and you need to find a balance like between
true.
stuff like that. Yeah. And for our last segment, we're going to talk about your TikTok actually. Like,
Hmm.
how did you get started on like making all these videos about like your experience and all of the other interesting topics that have been
Hmm.
coming up about South Asian immigration and topics related to the diaspora?
Ooh, that is very interesting. So, um, I think with most of millennial people, like I am a millennial, we saw the app as something, Gen Z does. And, when the pandemic hit, I was kind of bored because, you don't know what to do. You're cooped up in your house and this and that. So I think back in 2020, I downloaded TikTok as a joke. And then it kind of snowballed into content. I realized TikTok was actually TikTok was actually the first time I realized that there is a whole diaspora of people like Indo-Surinamese people. So, it piqued my interest, and I realized that every person has a story to tell, and I realized that in the South Asian space, that it was mostly dominated by Indian and Pakistani people. The funny thing is that I am actually half Pakistani and Surinamese myself. So I realized that there was a lot of opportunity for Pakistani people and Indian people on the app, right? But at the same time, I realized that a lot of people were not familiar with the history or the culture or the cuisine or the language of like Indo Caribbean people in general, and especially Indo Surinamese people. So, me being interested in like South Asian culture and me being half, um, I call it being part of like both sides of this South Asian spectrum, because you 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 have the Desi side on one side, then you have the diaspora part on the other side. I see myself as like the bridge between like both cultures. So I was like, I have all these experiences and I have all this, stuff going on in my life. Like, I want to share it, and I want to, I want to let people know that we exist, because most Desi people don't even know that there are people of South Asian descent in the Caribbean, in Africa, and all these other places. So I wanted to I wanted to leverage me being able to go into the Desi space, but being able to bring that Caribbean aspect into that. So in a way, I am exposing my other half to my other half at the same time. So I just wanted a way to let people know that we exist, and to let people know to let people know what we go through, and to let people know that we are also part of the South Asian diaspora. Speaking as a Surinamese, because I'm half, so I can easily like chameleon my way. But now I'm speaking as a Surinamese person, so yeah. And my TikToks are not consistent. They just are random, but when I have an actual point to make, I make sure to like make it as clear and concise as possible. And my content ranges from like history, linguistics, social issues, gastronomy. Um, Sometimes I put like Surinamese uh, Surinamese recipes on there, because as a Surinamese person living in Canada, you don't have access to the same things that a Surinamese person in Holland has access to. So I also show the struggle of like a third culture kid that lives in Canada, that grew up in like a different culture, that has parents of like two different cultures, and now lives in like a different culture. I am trying to like personify my TikTok in a way, like bring me as a person to like oop, to like my audience. So yeah.
Yeah. And when you're making those videos, you automatically come into like the Western side, like the Canadian and US side. And
Yeah.
yeah, so people there get to like also learn new things because like
And
they usually
yeah,
think like it's just Guyana or
a
that
lot of
it doesn't
people,
like
yeah,
go further.
a lot of people, they don't even know where Suriname is before they see my videos. And sometimes they see like comments and they're like, "Oh my God, this is the first time I've ever heard of like Suriname." And then I get so happy because yeah, like it shows like m- my TikToks have the effect of like teaching people stuff. And it doesn't matter if it's like one person or two people, but like, I find myself like fighting for this space that a lot of like Guyanese and Trinidadians have like occupied in a way. So, you gotta find that space to like let people know that, hey, we are part of the same space. It's not just Gu- Guyanese or like Trinidadians. And with that, I found that, it's not just only the Surinamese people that are struggling with this. It's also the Fijians. It's also the Mauritians. It's also people of um, Indian descent that are in Africa. Like, it's a whole s- s- slew of people that I try that I try to take along with me.
Yeah, because like I've met people from like Mauritius and Trinidad and Tobago, and
Right,
also seen like different people from like different parts of like the world and the diaspora
right,
on TikTok as well.
right,
And it is interesting how you have like the similarities between us, but like it's definitely different because
right,
we had different influences and took our own different path.
right,
So we might not be as connected as much to where our ancestors started, but we created our own thing for ourselves. So
true,
when I started like hearing people say that, oh, you can just go back to like living in South Asia because like yeah, of course you have like a connection, and there's like also this thing where you can like until the fifth generation go to India and stuff like that. But for instance, my family does not have a connection there, and the records and stuff they don't really match up. So and they don't really have any reason to go there other than to see like what it looks like and more like as a tourist rather
right,
than uh what other people go there for. That's more
true.
related to familial or religious reasons.
See, this is also
Yeah.
another struggle. A lot of Indo Caribbeans in general, right? They have a very vague understanding of where they are from. Most people they only know that they are from India, right? And the stuff that I try to like teach people in my TikToks is that there are specific regions where our ancestors uh, came from initially. And this is not a coincidence with what we see in the culture nowadays. There is a difference, and there is a reason why we eat certain foods that are different than the foods that other Indian or Pakistani people eat. Right? Because like India is divided into like regions and provinces, right? So it is not a coincidence why our ancestral language happens to be Bhojpuri, or why we use certain spices in our food, or why we make roti the way we make it, right? This all goes back to these specific regions, which are um, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, and people do not know that. And that is what I try to teach people, that there is not just a Indian culture, but that there are Indian cultures, and specifically for Indo Caribbeans, right? If you want to connect to your ancestral culture, you have to go to these regions specifically. Because it's not just, oh, you can just pick and choose, it's all just the same country. No, India is a highly diverse country, and it's not just that you can just randomly like feel feel represented just because the person is from like South Asia, right? So
Yeah,
you gotta know your regions. You gotta know the history behind it. You, you gotta know why your ancestors. w- w- You gotta know why your ancestors were brought to these countries. You gotta know the history behind it. Being of South Asian descent is not enough, because over the span of like 200 years, right? As you said, we have created our own identity, and people are still trying to navigate it. Because nowadays, mi- mainland South Asians and Indo Caribbeans are interacting with each other, right?
yeah,
And we are trying to find common space, but at the same time, we are trying to carve out our own identity in the same space. And that's what a lot of Desi people do not understand. Because, to them, we are just Indians, but it is much more complicated than that. You gotta factor in 200 years of separate history, mixing of like different people, creating new people. I mean, crea- creating new e- ethnicities that came from the interaction of like South Asians and Africans and all these other influences. There is a lot of stuff that goes inside of that identity.
yeah. Because like these things are like very interesting because like I saw different people who came from India, but I didn't know they were from India because they have more um, East Asian features as well. And usually, like, if you see like people that more look like me or my family, I think like those people would be from India, but like, um, that's not true. It's like there are just many different
There's
people.
a lot of different people in what we call India, and people are only exposed to a fraction of the country, and mostly this is because of like Bollywood, and because of that, um, people are mostly exposed to Punjabi culture because of like how widespread Bollywood is, and because of that, people don't seem to realize that Punjabis are one of the many people that are pr- present in South Asia.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but also that Suriname especially also has like Indonesian and
it's a
Chinese
very
influence as well.
multicultural country. Yes.
And and I think it's also, yeah, because of like the Dutch influence. That's like the reason why that but I haven't really seen like that influence in like other parts that you of like South America or the Caribbean,
Yeah.
that they like usually moved from Suriname to the other places like later on because they were like they had like opportunities to uh in a way after the end of the in indentureship. uh like, did I say it right? Because like
Yes.
yeah, so you have that thing going on because like the other parts of like South America have like more Japanese influence as well as I didn't know this, but apparently Suriname also had like Korean influence. But
Really?
it was like a bit, yeah, it's a bit smaller. I went to like Korean class at this like this place like in Suriname. They like this lady gave like the classes at like a school, and she
Yeah.
also has a restaurant like near a
Yeah.
place that I'm close to. So I did not know this,
I mean,
and
I knew we had like Jewish influence,
oh, of course that as
Chinese,
well.
Indonesian, and all that, but like Korean is new to me.
They even made a series about it on Netflix.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Is it called Narcos?
yeah, Narco Saints.
Oh, Narco Saints, yeah. Yo, when I first saw that, I was like super excited. And then when I found out that it was shot in Venezuela, I was like, oh man, this could have been such a good opportunity for Suriname.
Yeah,
But
but
it
yeah,
goes to show that, Suriname really does exist. And the funny thing is, like, I have Brazilian roommates, right? And you would have think that they know where Suriname is. And I'm like, hey, I'm your neighbor. And they're like so confused. And I'm like, I'm from Suriname. And they're like, where is that? And I'm like, okay, Suriname is shouldn't be that invisible, you know? So,
yeah,
when I saw that Netflix thing going on, I was like, okay, people are kind of starting to recognize it. And this is the whole point of my TikTok, to like be a voice of my own people eventually. Cause um the whole sphere, the whole South Asian sphere, as the whole South Asian space is mostly dominated by like Desis. And if we look at the Indo Caribbean space, right, it is mostly dominated by Guyanese and Trinidadians. And me being Surinamese, I want to have a little piece of that too, and to teach people about stuff. So yeah, and
yeah,
being half Pakistani and half Surinamese, as I said before, I can expose people to each other, because this can be also seen in my follower count, where I have followers from like the Caribbean, but also from South Asia. So yeah,
because people want to learn, people want to know, people want to grow,
exactly.
and like it just feels like better if you like uh culture yourself and learn about things like by going to places or looking like following people who are very knowledgeable about stuff about this and who tell their story, and it like broadens your perspective and about the things that you know or might not know yet,
Right.
which is like also like fun and exciting as well, like, oh, I learned this
I
new
mean,
thing about this place.
This is why TikTok is such an amazing place. You get to learn about people in like in like different countries and like different homes and all that, and it's like an amazing place. to be. And it first started out as a joke, but I don't think it's a joke anymore.
No, it's like full on serious right
Yeah,
now. Like it's you become that person that people sort of like go to for like information like this now, or to hear
right.
your thoughts and
Yeah,
opinions on it.
it's really odd, but also humbling at the same time. Like you see people agree and disagree and this and that, and it's like broadens your perspective on things. And me being able to be that this sort of ambassador, like it feels kind of awesome to be honest, because there's not a lot of Surinamese people on TikTok making the stuff that I do, as far as I know.
Yeah, because they're also not all gonna be making videos in English. They're mostly gonna do it in Dutch and like
Right,
put in some like English buzzwords in, yeah,
right,
in there when they're talking or doing some stuff. So that's why I also made my channel actually also during like 2020 COVID, and I was like,
right,
okay, I want to like expose people to like this type of information and talk to many people and
right,
also do it in English so many more people can understand because English has turned into like this universal language for everyone. That's like a bit of a mix of everything in there. So then let me try it and see whose interests I can pique with all of this like new information and who wants to like talk about this and for yeah, maybe someday visit Suriname as well or in work together on projects and stuff like that because I'm talking to artists and stuff like that, and so
right,
they can like find connections as well and perhaps work with each other on later projects.
right.
But we've come to the end of this session because I usually like to keep it around 2 hours, so it's like
Hmm.
not too straining for you, and also so we can like do other things like go deeper on certain things in different parts for
Right.
like a different episode or something like that.
Oh yeah,
But
definitely,
yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
thank you very much for joining me and being here. It's like so fun to like talk to you and like
Oh yeah,
and learn
likewise.
about this
I
stuff.
like talking to people I can relate to. You being in Holland, me being born in Holland, us being a Surinamese. It's nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like I haven't found like many people that are like Surinamese, Pakistani, and like know like the about this. It's usually like really separated,
Right.
and they have like different
I mean, this is
yeah,
why I'm like half and half. You get both.
the best of both worlds.
Yeah, exactly. You get the best of both worlds. I mean, if you want me to be Pakistani, I can be Pakistani. And if you
Yeah,
want me to be
I could just be
Surinamese, I
full
can be
Surinamese.
Surinamese.
Yeah,
But yeah,
because like different people I've met, like different Pakistani people, actually came here through like Spain and stuff like that. So they
right.
have like different a different sense of like culture that has
Experience it.
already
Yeah,
like
exactly.
experienced and been a part of them. So
Right,
it's the whole process is different, but it's also giving me a different perspective, which is also good.
right.
But thank you for being here, and thank you for joining me.
Yeah, no, it
And
was it was lovely.
maybe we'll see each other again on a different podcast, maybe a bit more, yeah, different episode, maybe a bit
Hmm.
more uh, into a certain topic that we might be talking about later on.
Right.
But thank you very much. And for anybody watching this, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you also for watching us. And so I'll say, have a nice day.
And have a
And
nice day to you too.
thank you very much, even though it's not day anymore, it's like
It's
dark.
not day, huh? Oh,
Yeah, it's
it's
like that
night.
time again.
Yeah, man.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, but
thank you, Rowan, for joining us. Rowan is like another guy that I interviewed like a while ago, and we made like a song together as well. I'm going to like make a music
what?
video for it and do like some other stuff because like it took a while because uh, uh, I was very busy. but I'm glad to be starting up with like this stuff again.
Right.
So have a nice day, and we'll see each other next time.
Yeah,
Bye,
for sure.
guys. Bye.
Bye bye.